Good afternoon and welcome. This is Tommy Marks. I'm the Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council and the Director of the Virginia Minority Business Development Agency's Business Center located in Alexandria, Virginia. We welcome you today on behalf of Sharon Pender, the President and CEO of the Capital Region Minority Supply Development Council and the operator of the Virginia MBDA Business Center. Today we begin our series of webinars associated with and focused on the federal agencies and how to do business with them. Our featured guests today are from the Department of Homeland Security and the Health and Human Services Agency. And they come with a great wealth of knowledge, and we will get to them shortly. But I just want to share a few things with you that's happening in our community. If you follow the news, you know for the last year, President Biden initially signed with one of his first executive orders, 13895, which is focused on increasing minority spend in the federal space. And these two experts will share with us some things that they're doing in order to meet those requirements as asked by the president. The other thing is that MBDA has been codified in law. Can't say that enough. That happened November the 15th when the president signed the infrastructure bill. It's a part of that. So it has added more teeth to the agency and Department of Commerce on their mission of advocating for minority businesses. I tell people it's not an overnight sensation. It's going to take time, but the building blocks and foundations has been added so that we can get there. The other piece is that MBDA is going to also start looking at putting some business centers in rural areas. Most of them are in metropolitan areas, the business centers as we know them today. And that's one of the things that also coming out of the law that came out in November. And a final piece of information is should be near and dear to your hearts is that the thing called the State Small Business Credit Initiative 2.0, which was initially established by President Obama's administration. And it was about $1.5 billion set aside to go down to states to help small businesses with access to capital. And so President Biden has added to that, and there's now a $10 billion pot that the states will be divided among the states and the territories to help with access to capital for minority small businesses. And so that is coming out. Treasury is actually the agency that actually issues those dollars down to the states, and that's all being worked as each state had to prepare a proposal on how they plan to distribute the funds. But again, and that's all tied to what we're doing, which is really our focus is on the minority business community and to really understand how to do business at all levels. And today is really at the federal level. And we'd like you to sit back and enjoy, take good notes. The things we talk about here is being recorded. It will be on our website when it's done, on our YouTube page, and our Facebook pages. So you'll be able to go back and review it. Again, like I said, two outstanding guests, and I thank them up front for taking the time out of their busy schedules, especially based on a lot of stuff that's going on, not just at home here, but overseas. They have some things that they end up having to do with the other agencies. So I will start by asking them both to come on screen now, and as I do short introductions, and then they will each give a spill on their agency and an overview to share with you. So welcome, Darlene. Welcome, Shannon, to our webinar today. And thanks for your support to the Virginia Minority Business Development Agency's Business Center. I'll start with Ms. Bullock, and I promise I won't eulogize her as we had our rehearsal
Don't do
But
that now.
but 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 I got to tell you a little bit about her, and so that you know that who you're visiting with today at this time. So Ms. Bullock is the director, the executive director for the United States Department of Homeland Security's Office of Small Business, Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, better known as the OSDBU office, out in the every federal agency except the Department of Defense, which they had to be different, and I think we all came from there at one point in time, passed through
Right.
those doors. And she is actually she was appointed in 2020, but she was the deputy director in 2015, and then in 2019 they made her the acting director, and they were smart enough, not always do the right thing, but kept that the continuity and the expertise there in DHS. And she manages over $6 billion worth of small business funding that actually goes to small businesses, both prime and subcontractor, in her daily duties, working with her program managers throughout Department of Homeland Security, which she'll share. Okay. And Mr. Shannon Jackson, you can't get rid of some people. You know, the little known story is really I worked for him at one point in time. In that hierarchy of DOD, I was in the Army. He'd probably be modest, but he was at DOD. And if you understand the hierarchy, when they call, you got to start running. And so my good friend Shannon Jackson is here, blessed. The Health and Human Services, they got smart and they selected him to lead their program 120 days ago. So we're gonna be transparent. Don't beat him up too bad. He just got there, but 120 days in, he ought to know everything that
Sure.
everybody's supposed to know. Isn't that right, Darlene?
Exactly.
Okay, Shannon, we got you. So Mr. Jackson is besides doing what he does, it's a 29-year federal government employee, which includes he's a veteran. So part of that service was in the Army, and then as a civil servant. And so we're glad to have him. And he's if people in the audience know him, the DoD Mentor Protege program was his baby. And the things that they were able to do there under his leadership while he was at DoD. So we're going to start with Miss Bullock and ask her to give us an overview of her agency, and then we'll come to Mr. Jackson.
Okay, can you hear me, everyone? Good afternoon. Thanks for having us, Tommy. And I'm glad to be here and with Shannon. He's one of my favorite panelists to talk with, because we have a lot in common. Coming from large organizations, and we just have a good time. So I like being on panel with Shannon. I appreciate you all both of us having me again. And thanks to your staff who does a good job with organizing everything. So just to talk a little bit about Homeland Security, you all might have a lot of questions about Homeland. DHS, when you hear those words, it can be a bit daunting, just like Shannon came from DOD, Mr. Marks from DOD, or the Army, DOD, but I came from the Army too. So I was getting ready to say "hua" to you and Shannon.
Cool.
Yeah, "hua." As a civilian, and fact was one of my favorite jobs, working on base for the Army as a contracting officer, contract specialist. But now, present time, we're at DHS, and I'd like to thank what you said, Tommy, about the continuity at DHS and making sure that expertise was there. A lot of people were worried when Kevin Boshears retired. How would DHS handle small business? What's the path forward? What are we doing? And it's business as usual. And we have to thank Kevin for, he's no longer with us, unfortunately. If a lot of individuals don't know, Kevin passed away this last December. Quite shocking to me, him as a mentor, but he created a great program. And so, to honor that, one of my things is continue this great program and improve on it the way that I choose to make some of those changes, to get us in a different space. So I've made a lot of different changes to the program, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But a little bit about DHS is we're a huge organization. We have about 250,000 employees. We spend about $21 billion a year on the average. Some year there's a little bit of outliers, particularly with COVID, particularly when there are disasters. We have to react to those. DHS is made up of several different components, we call them, but they used to be separate agencies. And after 9/11, all those agencies came together to create Homeland Security. So a lot of them were separate for hundreds of years, like the Coast Guard, et cetera. So they just, kind of had their own mission, but you got to kind of think DHS is one. We have one goal, is to protect people that live in this country and visitors to this country. But, we have TSA. I want to make sure I get it all right. TSA, when do we use TSA? Every time that you travel in the airport, right? The screening of your bags. People might hate it. You got to take the liquid out, but it's important. It's the reason why that's done. ICE, for example. Everyone doesn't like the mission of ICE, but it is also one of the missions to protect us as citizens in this country. FEMA. FEMA, I have a spot in my heart for FEMA and the mission that they have. A lot of times we don't want them to spend a lot of money, because what does that mean? That means disasters have happened. Something catastrophic has occurred. But I will tell you, whenever FEMA turns on, it's like clockwork. I don't want anybody to think here, when there's a different president or there's a different administration, that they don't do their job. They do their job. And so they go to places to help people like you and I who pay taxes, our family members, when there's a disaster or some kind of hurricane. We often hear about the large things that occur, but there are hurricanes and tornadoes all across this country, all times of the year, and FEMA is on top of it. Secret Service, they don't just do dignitaries that come to the country. Part of their duty is our economic system and our money system. They're responsible for that. U.S. Coast Guard, you're out boating with your family and friends, right? Put on your vest, Tommy, when they come by. That's just a piece of what they do, right? They do drug interdiction. They do ice breaking. Just a wide range of different activities. CBP, Customs and Border Protection. They don't. They have a huge piece of our economy and making sure things don't come in that are dangerous to us. A lot of screening, of course, the border wall. We all know the latest news about the border and how CBP contributes to that, and how policy contributes to that, frankly, right? USCIS, they are, individuals want to come into this country, you have to apply. USCIS is a part of that. FLETC is where the federal law enforcement training centers in Georgia and in Maryland, and they train federal officers. My brother's is a Capitol Hill Police lieutenant, and years ago he was trained at FLETC, and so it comes kind of full circle that now I support that organization. And OPO is the main office within DHS. Along with them and the Coast Guard, and I would say CBP, are the largest spenders. And OPO supports our science and technology division. Shannon may talk about their SBIR program, but DHS also has an SBI program. And CISA, cybersecurity agencies, also procurements are out of Office of Procurement Operations. And we also have a classified group, a group that they issue the classified contracts, and they're called the Office of Special Acquisition. You may not see their procurements anywhere but on the ARC or somewhere like that. But I just want to give you a little piece of taste of all the pieces that make up Homeland Security. And so we do quite well in small business. I was going to save these stats for Shannon, but I only give one, Shannon, today. Right now, as Tommy mentioned, $6 billion. I need to change it. Last year, fiscal year 21, DHS did about almost $8 billion to small businesses. That's the largest we've ever had in either percentage achievement as well as dollar amounts. And that's in prime contracting, not including subcontracting. So, we have, a huge mission, several missions, and, the small business office is here to make sure that companies like yours on this video, we love doing these kind of things. I know I do. To a lot of diverse groups, know that the opportunities exist. Can it be a little daunting? Yes. Can it be a little confusing? Yes. But that's why, offices like ours are created in each agency to help kind of with that. And also one last thing is in each of those components I spoke about, there's small business specialists. So it's not just dealing with my office where we have about 10 people, but we have small business specialists in each one of those components, with Coast Guard having many who also act as contracting officers across the United States. So that's all I have for right now, Tommy. So thanks for having us here again.
Appreciate it. All right, Mr. Jackson.
Well, I want to say good afternoon to everyone out there in that virtual world. I guess first, I want to thank the Virginia Minority Business Development Agency for hosting this event. Tommy, it's always a pleasure reconnecting on these type of events. Second, I'd like to thank the small business community. These events are very important for each and every one of you that want to do business with, whether the federal government and particularly DHS and HHS. So I want to thank all of the folks for participating today. And I also want to thank Darlene. Darlene, it's always a pleasure being on these panels with you. I know we always have an interesting time, especially when I was in DOD. Now I'm in HHS, a little bit different scenario, but again, it is really about that small business community and how we, as a collective group, be able to engage our industrial base to help them become a part of each of our organizations. So it's always a pleasure. Just a little bit about HHS. As Tommy mentioned, I've been here for about 120 plus days, but it has been a whirlwind of being a new senior executive here at HHS. So as you know, HHS has the third largest budget in the federal government. Last year, just to add to Darlene's comment there, we spent over $9.3 billion in small business prime contracts. Okay, so we are doing a lot in small business, and we're going to keep that going with the commitment to our small business community. One of the things that I'm still trying to wrap my head around is HHS has about 132 program offices in variations in CDC, FDA, CMS, multiple locations and program offices where opportunities are at. And one of the things that we are really trying to focus in on is really trying to get to see all of these program offices and how we can bring small business to the forefront and some of the opportunities. Just a couple of things regarding stats and whatnot. You know, last year, you know, first and foremost, I want to thank our small business community that is currently doing business with the department and the folks who are looking for future business. Learn some things that, again, we're going to be focusing in on, and we'll get to that once we get into the panel. But, you know, I'm a data guy, as Tommy would tell you, being a DOD, data speaks. You know, two of the areas that we will be focusing in on as we move forward this year and in the future is the Hub Zone and Surge Disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So again, a lot of good things are happening inside of the department. As everybody knows, we have been on the forefront with the Department of Defense regarding COVID initiatives, and that is still a part of the overall mission for the Department of Health and Human Services. The one thing that I realized coming over here is being a DOD, we help the warfighter. Being at HHS, we are responsible for the American people. And what I've learned over my 120 days is it really, whether child care all the way to adult care, it's a vast spectrum of opportunities in medical research. So there's so many things that we're doing here, and definitely I am happy to be here today and to provide some of the information on how you as a small business can do work with the department. Thank you, Tommy.
Yeah, thank you both. And in fact, folks, if you didn't catch that, so what we have today is 2 of the top 5 spenders in the House, right? That's not a little change that's going out there. And as Ms. Bullock said, my numbers were a little dated. She talked about 8 billion in prime contracts, and she's got subcontracting opportunities. When you kind of add that to that, we're talking double digits. As my grandson would say, he's now turned 11. He's a double digit midget. So it's out there. Listen, we know there's a lot of changes. We know President Biden came in his administration with some great ideas, and we know how things happen without the support of Congress. I don't care who the president is, they can't get stuff done. And so the November thing was really an eye opener. Congress really supported and passed that law for MBDA. Now, MBDA is a big advocacy group. We don't have contract opportunities and those types of things. But what are from your agency perspective, and the questions for both of them, we'll start with Darlene, based on the executive order 13-895, which increased the minority spend that you all have had to do in order to, move that needle, start moving that needle forward.
So yeah, I'll start. The executive order, I think it's 813-985. I get switched up to. Is it 985, Shannon? It's 985. Yeah. So that kind of set the framework, and the president signed that his first day in office. So clearly, the administration's focus is on small business, disadvantaged business, the underserved community. But that executive order also spoke to hiring, a lot of different things regarding underserved groups. And those groups range from things that we already do, Shannon and I, and you used to do, Tommy, set asides and make sure, those communities have those opportunities, but also, who else is underserved? You have people of sexual orientation, you have rural areas, all those are inclusive of what's underserved. Now, some of our challenges, like Shannon and I's challenges, all those don't happen to really have set asides for them. There is no set aside based on your sexual orientation. There is no set aside maybe for hub zone, for rural areas or distressed areas. So part of the communication that I've been doing is making sure that, it's clear what we can do, maximizing what we can do, and then making companies understand who may not have set aside, you're still a small business, right? You're still maybe a small disadvantaged business, a way you can identify yourself. And then about all the different programs. So, we have a lot of outreach, a lot of vendor outreach. DHS does a monthly vendor outreach session that we haven't stopped. It kind of hit us a little bit because we went from, meeting every day and actually looking at people face to face, talking to them, giving them a hug. You hadn't seen them in a while, to when COVID hit, we had to switch to virtual. And so we went from in-house to virtual, and we may have been down maybe 2 months, and we were right back on the virtual train doing what we needed to do. So that's one program that we wouldn't let, lie. Now, some of the changes that have occurred. So Shannon, we can talk about what they've done at HHS, but at DHS, so the framework has been the executive order, but there's also an OMB memo, 22-03, which kind of, hey, agencies, you make sure that you're going to do this, right? So you have the president saying this, you have OMB saying this is what you shall do by these certain dates, et cetera. So a couple of things have been for DHS, for the entire federal government, the small disadvantaged business goal has been increased to 11%. Now, it's different at every agency. Shannon's is different than mine. My goal, my contribution to that 11% is 17%. DHS, we feel we can do that. We did 17% last year, and so we're focused. Some of the components went, what in the world? But hey, we have to do it. We have to use the 8A program. You have to do what we have to do to make sure that those opportunities exist. And I don't like to think of everything as a goal, go, because it's really not that. But you have to consider it. And we have responsibilities, and we have to make it happen. And so when we see that we're not maximizing opportunities that we should, then the Oswald office at DHS is very involved. And Shannon's probably very involved with HHS. There may be agencies where you don't see that much involvement of the Oswald. It's not by their own design or fault. It's because they have not had access. Now that leads to another thing in that memo, is that it talks to the Oswald directors having access to senior managers, the senior executives. By law, I report to the Deputy Secretary of the Department of Homeland. That shows you, Shannon will say the same, that shows you where the Oswald is supposed to be respected and how important the job is. And so that's also in the memo. So we had to verify that those things are happening. The also performance plans. So senior executives like myself and Shannon, we already have in our plans, because we're Oswald people, we have to meet these certain goals. But that did not translate to people who have the money. So some people have the money, no disregard. Not that they didn't like small businesses. Some do, some don't. I'm just being candid. It's kind of challenging. But now, because of that memo, and I want everybody to go read it, is one of the directions is you will have in SES performance plans a piece that talks about, adhering to the agency's socioeconomic goals. That was never done before, and it should have been done a long time ago. So the people who hold the money, you need to get with it. So it's part of those performance plans. So those are some of the changes that we've had to make based on the memo. But at DHS, it's kind of, I don't say business as usual, but we've never stopped. COVID's not stopped us. Nothing has stopped us from doing what we are, supposed to do anyway. A lot of those things in a lot of this conversation and these memos are just the tenets and basis of an Oswald office. It's things that we do every day. It's just how effective you can be, collaborating with your senior procurement executive, contracting people, et cetera. So it gives a little more teeth to how important our job is, both of those memos, the memo and the executive order. So there's just a few of the things that have, that had to have changed because we were directed to not just us, but leadership, the secretaries of each one of these agencies. So Shannon, right. Yeah.
But Darlene, you took a lot of those points out there, but I'm gonna add to it. I think what both of those, what the executive order did and the OMB memo, is really put the teeth to it, put the meat to what we do, and made it important, not just for Darlene and myself, but the whole entire agency.
Right.
And in order for us to achieve our small business goals, everybody got to be in.
Yeah.
I've never, and I want to say one thing, really, it's not about the goals. It's having qualified companies that can do work for the federal government or one of the agencies, and they're successful.
Yeah.
The goals will take care of itself. So I think one of the things that we're really pushing is what I'm pushing my folks to really look at. Where are those good companies that are doing great work? Because this is where we highlight those companies to our vast programs and really have them show the benefits that they're making. Because half of the time, in my mind, I think that our program offices, our requirements owners don't know really who actually is doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And when they know that, wow, that's a small business who built that technology, or that's a small business that is really, doing great work as a PMO shop. That's the things we have to highlight, the success of those companies within inside the organization. And even at the higher levels, they need to understand that small businesses are making an impact. So with that executive order, another thing it really provided us was each of the federal agencies had to develop a plan. And those plans really identify how are we going to get at this new goal of 11%. I'm gonna be totally honest with everybody, is that I fought it for a minute because I didn't know if the market really yielded that those type of numbers. And then if you're trying to get to 15%, what that means is we have to grow the industrial base. Because as Darlene will tell you, and Tommy will tell you, and any other federal agencies will tell you, some of the data that we're receiving from SBA is that there is a drastic decline in small businesses. So really, we should be flipping it on the other side, on its head, and saying, how are we going to grow the small businesses in the communities that we need to grow them in to help get us to that 15% in the next couple of years? So that has really, you know, those plans, I think every federal agency, they had to submit it. You know, we just got ours approved recently, and we're starting the process of starting to really implement some of those things. I think the other thing that the OMB did was really focused on small businesses in the sense of subcontracting. You know, that has always been a challenge across every federal agency regarding subcontracting. And what they've asked the federal government to do is really provide better oversight, strengthen, that's the word, strengthen the oversight on prime contractors in their subcontracting plans and their goals. So that's another critical thing, because again, if the large primes are not honoring their small business plans and goals, then one, we won't continue to grow that industrial base, because the beauty of subcontracting is helping our industrial base grow for those companies to potentially be primes in the future. And if we don't do that, that's the first level of growing our industrial base. The other piece is really trying to get, you know, how do we look at the programs with inside of SBA? You know, I know we meet as a council monthly, and I am the executive secretary of the council, and there's a lot of, you know, how are we going to do this? You know, we got to look at some of our programs now, and I think that's one of our things that we're looking at. So again, the executive order and the OMB memo, as Darlene stated before, it really gives us some, we got another person in the fight with us. That's really, and that's the administration. So, and I know how important.
Okay, look, no.
So, you know, what time, I'll say this, what I do is, you know, when they come to me, I say, I have a copy of the executive order and the memorandum, you know, but they don't want to listen. And I'll say, go talk to President Biden.
There you go. There you go.
Gotta bring it to, like, look, this is what you need to, this is like what we're talking about. This is the teeth of the matter. This is the third person.
I think, you know, in the end, and I read it, it comes down to what we're going to do. We're going to ensure that folks that attended this, we're going to hang it so they can have it and read it for themselves. It's got more teeth than I've ever seen in our business that holds people accountable in order to really take a look at it. Because, we don't have set-asides, but the way you do your acquisition strategy and what you go after, it can be done. So, with that, you know, Shannon, I would, and this question really applies to both of you. If I'm an MBE, how do I engage with your small business office, and how do I find opportunities, you know, with your agency? And do I have to register? I mean, I know it sounds like a basic question, but there are things, and I'll caveat it with this. I think most folks, when they're coming in, they know how they may already know how to do business. But, you know, there's some walls. DHS and headquarters is one thing, but below you at the agency level, sub-agency level, sometimes there are different requirements from a certification standpoint, or, you know, that one must have. How do you find out about those types?
So I think the other piece, so it goes back to those two memos. And one of the memos stated, I believe it's improve or strengthen our ability to have forecasts available for our industrial base. And this ties to the question. So what we're doing now, you know, as a result of those memos and executive orders, is really how do we centralize our forecasting system, where industry can go register for one, and the reason why you want to register is so that when they're doing a search, because the acquisition community is utilizing those systems, when they're doing a search, you want somebody to pull that name, your company's name up. And if you're registered in there properly, your name or your company potentially will come up as when they're doing their market research, as a company that potentially can fill this small business requirement. So, what I would give everybody now, and I will send it to Tommy, is if you go to our site called osdbu.hhs.gov, that's where you will find, that's where you can register for the Small Business Customer Experience, SBCX site, which that is the platform that we are utilizing to funnel our small businesses to look for opportunities and forecasts. One of the things that, when I got here, how do we centralize that message? How do we centralize a location where people can go, easy to use, able to identify opportunities and really reduce the barriers? Because what I believe it does is, now from a small business perspective, if you go to the site, you identify you register, you identify who you want to work with. Then after you identify who you want to work with, then you determine what requirements align with your company's capability. So you're actually shaping your potential conversation with whether a small business specialist, the first line of defense, and then after that, potentially the program office or the contracting office. So again, we use that as our centralized, and that, really has been how companies can actually start the process with HHS.
Okay, appreciate it. Darlene?
So we have several things. One, Shannon mentioned about forecasting. So for a long time, DHS has had a centralized forecasting system called APFS, Acquisition Procurement Forecast System, APFS. I want to make sure I had the link, because we just went to the cloud. And so the link is, even if you just put in the search engine, DHS, APFS, it'll come up, but it's apfs-cloud.dhs.gov. And so every procurement that's, non-sensitive and over $250,000 is posted on that for all across DHS, every component. So that's our centralized system. Now, that system talks about what we plan to do. May not happen, may happen. Majority of them do. It shows, okay, what kind of, if this is going to be a set aside, what kind of program are we going to use? It gives a point of contact, gives you who the small business specialist is for each of those components. It's not linked, however, to their updates that are supposed to be made. It's not linked to SAM, for instance. So, if you're looking for a requirement, it's not necessarily that it's not a link, and that might not be the same number that's used to track it. But I do want to say, if you are in APFS and there's a number that gives with an F, as in Frank, that's the final APFS number, and that's the number you should be using if you have a question about a certain potential procurement in that system. We also have our vendor outreach sessions, which we have done. We have virtually now, but we have every year, 10 times a year. We haven't stopped. So 4 of those sessions are for socioeconomic companies. March, we're about to have one for only women-owned small business in celebration of Women's History Month. Yes, Shannon. In November, we have our veterans event. We have a special one for 8A SDBs, and we have a special for hub zones. That's usually in the summertime. So other than that, you can be any small business, normal, regular small business, and be able to attend, as well as any of the other ones. We just kind of segregate out those just for those sessions. So I did put on my LinkedIn, though, and this is talking about what Shannon talked about as far as subcontracting. We're having a large to small subcontracting VOS. Our normal VOS includes the small business specialist, and prime contractor. So if you ever come to the VOS or able to register, because the registrations are gone in like a minute, but I'm kind of revamping the way we may do that. because I don't think speed should take precedence over need, you know? So it should be more NAICS code based versus how quickly you can register. So probably for October, we're going to start a new way we do VOS. You know, had a long conversation about that last night. But, you know, you put in DHS VOS, you can see how to register. We use a separate site called My Business Matches. We have the schedule of the rest of the events through the rest of this fiscal year. And so it's just a great program, and people seem to love it. But the one we're going to have in April supports subcontracting, because it's just going to be large companies and small businesses. I know they're going to go quickly. We're trying to make sure we get enough large businesses to support the effort. And so we haven't posted anything yet for about registration, any small companies. This group here today, and it'll be posted on SAM, and I'll tell you, it's going to be gone quickly because I don't have 100 large businesses that'll participate, right? So we have a set amount, and so there'll be more information that'll be out, but there's a little blurb on my LinkedIn if you want to see a little bit about it, or send me an email about it. My email address is there also.
Okay.
Tom,
All right.
Tom, can I just,
Yeah.
I just want to add, if it's okay if I add to that. And Darlene, I think great minds think alike here, because we are doing a large, small industry event, couple events. One will be just with the large primes for the HHS, really sitting down with them and letting them know that, you know, as a result of the OMB memo, how we're going to start really providing that better oversight to our large primes regarding those subcontract plans and subcontract goal achievement.
Right.
The second piece of that was, you know, one of the things we really are trying to do with our internal workforce is really get them the best training that we can to really better enforce those subcontract plans. And, you know, my partners from DAU, Defense Acquisition University, is really helping me and really trying to educate that workforce to be better prepared as we move into really trying to enforce those things. And that's the other piece I wanted just to Rain. There's going to be a lot of events that we will have coming up, and I'll highlight one towards the end that we're really going to, we're reshaping it for this year. So
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, it's great to hear because my last official act before I called myself retiring was congressional testimony on the Hill about what was really wrong with the subcontracting piece. And the thing that was wrong is lack of government enforcement on the primes. Even though we write real good contracts, put all these goals, the numbers in their metrics, but we never enforce it, us being the contracting officers. And so that's really good to hear, because with that, along with what happens on the prime side of the house, there's definitely many opportunities for companies, small businesses to grow and sustain. Okay, Shannon, I'd like to briefly ask you about and I heard Darlene say both of you have SBIR programs, and kind of if you could give me, you know, what's the key to that, and how important is that for businesses that are interested in that side of the house? Yes.
I will tell you, you know, innovation is always critical in any agency, any department, any federal organization. And what we've found over time and years is that small businesses do have innovative technology. And just to, you know, HHS has a SBIR, STTR program. Really, NIH is the real lead for that program. Now, I don't know if everybody watched the State of the Union address, but the president announced about the Advanced Research Project Agency for Health, which is another organization that will be potentially standing up, really targeting on those specific areas in research and for medical cures. Yes, innovation is important for HHS. Yes, we do have currently we have one organization that really spends looks like about 1.2 billion in research and development dollars go against all three phases or at least two of the phases of the SBIR process. And then you have the third phase of commercialization and then fast tracking and stuff like that. So you have great opportunities because all of the organizations that participate in the program are on that website. So that website is called SEED. I say SEED .nih.gov, and we'll put the link to the SEED, the research and development SBIR link in the chat here very soon before we end today. So
Okay. Right. Hey, look, we're gonna check the audience and take a couple of questions. Claudia, Alice, we have anything in the chat box?
Good afternoon, sir. No, not at this time. No questions.
Okay. Then say again.
Let me add something, Tommy, to something Shannon mentioned about training. And so
Please go ahead.
I'll say for the last 2 fiscal years, we did not have my background is a contracting officer and for over 25 years. So the combination with that and being the OSDBU is a pretty dangerous one, and a high level contracting officer, not one that just did, a bunch of task orders to, and a contracting officer at Homeland Security and the division director in the largest group. So that combination kind of, they go, oh, wait a minute, she knows what she's talking about, or,
There you go. There you go.
Because of that, I've instituted all this training. So SBA does a lot of the training in conjunction with us. And I do specialized training like about NAICS codes, about what the OSDBU sees is a lot of common mistakes that with market research and things like that. So those are classes that I've created, and we have them across DHS to all the procurement community. And I think it really has made a difference. We get, 200 or 300 people at a time in each course. I think people are hungry to understand more when they see all these things, and they try to understand what is this small business stuff, because it's not taught as much as, pricing, all these other things to become a contracting person. Small business is kind of not as taught, I think, and I'll admit to that, being a DOD intern, Army intern and contract specialist, the small business thing was not something that was, part of the rally of every day. It was meeting the mission with, okay, maybe I'll do some set asides, but my motto is, if you know better, you do better. So I say this every time we have class, is that, you leave out of here knowing more than when you left. We have like a lot of questions and comments, and people just enjoy a lot of it. But the training has been a big piece. Like Shannon said, people don't know what to do. They just gonna keep doing what they've been doing, right? And that's not, you can't do that. And you particularly can't do that. And I also train about the executive order and the advanced equity memo. So that's also part of all the training that we do.
Okay, appreciate it.
Question. This is Alice. I see a question.
Okay.
The question I see is the government is meeting the small business goals. However, 40% less small businesses have been doing business with the federal government in the last 10 years. What do you think can be done to improve new entrants to federal space?
I think if you're okay with me going, Darlene, what I think that can be improved is, one, we have to provide the opportunities. We have to be more opening the door more to opportunities for people, for companies that want to do business with the federal government. This is the reason why, by reducing the barriers and having readily available forecasts, companies that would not normally do business with the department would now have an opportunity to say, hey, I want to do business with the federal government. Here is who I want to do business with. And there's the opportunities that really align with what I do. So I think really it comes down to, and it has to be appealing. I think that in order for us to grow this industrial base, we have to change our thought process, and how do we get to that 15% in a couple of years of these companies that we need to grow the industrial base. The only way we're going to do that is really providing the opportunities for new entrants, for companies to do work. We're going to have to really get to that help grow our subcontract industrial base so they grow another company or working together with another company to help grow that company. I think it's two-part to that is companies that, SBA has those mentor programs that help mentor other companies grow. And I think it's the government's responsibility as well as our industrial-based responsibility to bring other companies along in order to really move forward and grow that industrial base. So over to you.
I have another question.
I think well, let me just add to that, Alex, that the memo 22-03 talks about new entrants. And so the commitment to the administration of making sure there are new entrants. One of the problems that we're all having that participate in those executive meetings is what is the definition of a new entrant? So, how do we want to define that? So that's one of the things that has been actively working. And I do want to say a lot of the things in that memo are just not talk. There have been action to them. And I've been on meetings about new entrants and how do we define that? Is it someone who's never had a government contract, maybe 5 years ago? So there has to be a common definition of what that is. And then how do we get there? New entrant is different maybe where at HHS than it is at TSA for security equipment. That's just not a market. On some DoD things, of course, it's just not a market for new entrants in maybe that space. So we got to think about how do we even do that? Shannon brought up, subcontracting and pulling companies up and mentor protege to try to get them to the space where they are prime contractors in that field that just seems so elusive to be a prime contractor. Right. So that's part of it too. But the memo specifically talks about new entrants.
Yeah, it sure does. And I think that probably the challenge, well, not probably, the challenge is, you got manufacturing, and then you got professional services. And we know what we've seen in the past is as soon as when they latch on to one company, program managers, whomever, they don't want to change. They want to stay with that same company. But that's not going to be an easy task to define that new entrant, Darlene. As I read that, but it's definitely got teeth in it. Alice,
Thank you.
One more question.
Yes, this question is from Mr. Jesse Crawford. How do you enforce subcontracting goals contained in major prime contracts?
Well, I'll start out that with Shane. And like Mr. Marks just said, Tommy mentioned his last testimony before he pretended to be retired was that it's very difficult. I'm not going to say it's not. I think subcontract is one of those the holes of the government. One of those like, kind of, how do you, we have the unfortunate job of sometimes talking to subcontractors who say, hey, they promised me this. As a sub, they put my name in their, proposal. They didn't comply to that. Part of it is clearly just staffing and people being able to do that. Resources, that's one of the things. Two is the rules of trying to enforce subcontracting have been a little willy-nilly over the last few years. They've gotten a little bit more teeth the last couple of years, but that's one of the things. I mean, what do you do? Yeah, it's good faith. Yeah, I tried. But what does that really mean? And then you have systems like ESRS that don't quite have all the capabilities that you need them to have. So it's a big combination of a lot of these things. But I'll tell you what DHS, one of the things that what we are doing is we're also making sure there's subcontracting goals and task orders. That has just been an elusive thing, right? So it's just like, well, what are you talking about? Let's say, for instance, I'll be really quick, that we have a DHS issues, one of our components, Coast Guard, one of the big ones, issues a $700 million task order under OASIS. Everybody knows what OASIS is, right? OASIS, I believe, has a 50% subcontracting goal anyway. And so what we're saying is, okay, you have an OASIS contract, and you really have to meet that subcontracting goal across the life of your contract. That's one thing people don't get. Some people think those goals go down to every task order. That's not correct. It's not how it works, right? And so I want to know, what we've started to institute at DHS is, what are you doing with my $700 million? Is some of my $700 million going to some women-owned companies? Is some going to, we're getting that down into the weeds about, you need to tell us what's happening with my money. And I liken it to, look, you go look for a car or a house, you want to know what the best school is. You want to know this. There are pieces that make up, oh, this is a good idea. This makes sense that I go here or I do this. So we are doing that. And we have an active my subcontracting people are actively looking to see who has not adhered to the plans. I'll tell you, it's as difficult as a lot of large businesses not reporting correctly in ESRS that we're discovering too. And Shannon may want to talk to that. So now, we even have, I'll say in our, you can provide credit to our tier 1 subcontractors. But when we go on ESRs, we don't see any mention of that they've done anything, which alludes to me that they aren't doing any small business subcontracting like they're supposed to be. So what I'm saying shortly is that help is on the way. We see it as an issue and a problem. The odds we can only do so much. We can bring it to attention. I'm not a contracting officer anymore. I can't go and change anything. Meetings like Shannon's having with the large businesses, similar to the ones I'm doing too. It's like, look, guys, gals, people, y'all have to get on board. And our secretary has something called corporate responsibility. So he wants to make sure that these large businesses are doing what they said they were going to do, and be diverse and be equitable and inclusive in their hiring and other practices. So Shannon may want to add to that.
So Shannon, we got like 2 minutes left, man.
Okay, well, I just.
So you got 30 seconds.
Okay, 30 seconds, 30-second push. So it's true, you know what I mean? And it really comes down to enforcement. Large primes are signing the contract that they are saying that they're going to do something. And what we, from the federal government's perspective, have to really help enforce that or provide that. That's why the key word to strengthening oversight. That means that we got to be looking at it. There is a manpower shortage, but we have to find those bigger contracts that we need that really help us grow that industrial base to really monitor. So, and SBA and GSA are working to help better. We just had the meeting yesterday with the council on really the redesign of the ESRS system. So their help is on the way. So thank you, Tom.
Okay. So look, my last question was going to ask you about how did COVID impact your agencies, but your opening statements about record year of contracts, you never stopped working. So COVID didn't impact it in a way of not being able to make awards. Listen, I want to thank you both for your time. That you spent with us, a lot of great information. We took down in the chat those websites on kind of how do you get in about your forecast, and we'll be sharing that with folks. There were also handouts posted on the webinar that each one of them provided that you have access to, and this will be on my website, which is www.mbda-virginia spelled out.com. And excuse my Louisiana twang. It's been a great session. Hey, our next webinar, we're going to talk with WMATA, the big transit guys in the area here. Stop driving them cars, save that gas, get on the metro, buses or the train. 21st of April, 1 to 2 o'clock, we're going to have Miss Michelle and her last name Howard, who will bring her Osnabu team and talk to us about how to do business with WMATA. Thank you, guys. For folks that are joining us, thank you very much for tuning in. Have a good day.
Bye, Shannon. Bye,
All right,
Tammy.
Darlene. All right, Tommy.
All right, bye.